Bienvenue à la 10e réunion du Comité permanent de la Chambre des ressources naturelles. Le comité se réunit aujourd'hui pour entendre le ministre des Ressources naturelles et ses fonctionnaires relativement
supplementary estimates B 2021-22, but only the subject matter. It's only supplementary estimates C that are under consideration for votes by this committee. I'm going to skip through all of the usual opening comments in the interests of time. I think online we have departmental officials who have all hopefully been part of the process before. We just ask that you address comments through the chair. Interpretation services are available. You can use floor, English, or French. And for anyone online, you will control your own muting, unmuting. We ask anybody who's not speaking to be muted. And with that, I think we're ready to jump into it. We had a discussion before the meeting started, and in order to save time again, we're going to pass on the minister actually giving his 5-minute opening statement so that we can go right into questions and answers and get through as many rounds as we can. Although I will ask that the opening statements that we had be entered into the official record, and that way it'll be part of the recordings for today, and those have been distributed to all members by the clerk. So with that on the official record, we will get right into questions and answers. And so we're going to do 4 rounds of 6 minutes with the minister's schedule. We should be able to fit that in, and then we'll see where we're at. So first up is Mr. McLean, and we're going to start the clock. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Minister, welcome officials. I'm going to start with a little leeway here, unless I have to reference something with this question. But Minister asked you a question in the House 2 days ago about oil that comes in from Russia to Canada at this point in time, and the approximately $500 million per year that we are funding Russian oil and Russian oligarchs and Russian economy and Russian war machine.
Sorry, point of order. I hate to interrupt. I'm not sure this has anything to do with the estimates necessarily.
Okay, let me reference, as I said I would, I will reference the...
The member has a right to ask the questions he wants. If it bothers the Liberals, that's their problem. They can counter in their questioning, but to interrupt the member when he's asking questions, I think is not acceptable.
And I will say that generally I've allowed a fair bit of latitude in the questions, letting each person control their direction they want to take the questions. That being said, we are here to study supplementary estimates C and B, and if we can keep within. But Mr.
Sure,
McLean,
let me be relevant here,
stop
Mr.
the
Chair,
clock there for a minute.
Yeah, we'll refer to the net zero accelerator funds that are being allocated here, and we'll talk about the net zero carbon emissions that would be provided with cleaner energy than we have coming from Russia at this point in time. So we can address the amount of oil that's coming from Russia to Canada. I know that you tried to correct me in the House and said that we haven't imported crude since 2019, and I rose in a point of order today to make that correction. And I was hoping to give you the opportunity to say that you actually meant we're not going to import any Russian oil into Canada. Minister, would that be the case, first of all?
So what I said in the House was we have not imported crude oil from Russia since 2019. That is true. And subsequent to that, we have banned the import of Russian oil. We added to that the import of petroleum products that are derived, that are either partly or wholly refined, including things like lubricants and motor oils. And we now have put into place, or in the process of putting in place, a ban on those as well.
Thank you, Minister. Much appreciated. The issue, of course, is with the ascent of Russian oil production, large international companies have vacated Canada and sought opportunities elsewhere, including in places like Russia, because of a restrictive regulatory environment imposed by this government on Canadian resource development. Do you see now the folly of the position of restricting responsibly developed, environmentally produced oil in Canada, and what will fill the void on the world stage and the impact of the money flowing with that void being filled?
Well, I would take issue with the restrictive resource development, and we put into place a better process, an environmental assessment process, to ensure that good projects actually can proceed, but that we are actually looking at environmental impacts on the way. in a manner that the previous system did not. I would say to you that there are many projects across this country in all kinds of natural resource areas that are moving either through that process or through provincial processes. You will have noted, I'm sure, that in Russia, most of the majors are pulling out of Russia. So Shell, BP, Equinor, and others are moving their assets out of Russia because of political instability. And there obviously will need to be conversations on a global basis. We started having them with the International Energy Agency ministers yesterday about how we address the concerns that Europe has.
Well, thank you, Minister, and that's a good answer. I just wonder why we didn't have the foresight to look at that prior to this event. And I recognize as well that Shell and BP are now pulling out of Russia, but they largely pulled out of Canada when your government got elected and developed more restrictive policies on resource development here in Canada. And you look at the amount of investment that has flowed out of the Canadian resource development industry, and it is very illustrative of a restrictive policy where they cannot see the outcome of the dollars they spend. I'll let you comment on that before we go further.
As you will expect, I don't agree with what you've said. I think in the current context, both industry and Canadians generally want to ensure that there is an appropriate thinking about resource development and economic opportunities, but also about environmental impacts and most particularly about climate change. And I think if you ask the CEO of Shell or you ask the CEO of BP, they would not agree with your characterization.
Well, no, I think they would actually, especially in Canada. But let's analyze that as far as the amount of finance that's coming out of the resource industry. If we actually take depreciation out of the equation, we are net negative as far as our capital stock in Canada goes, and that's been a consistent downturn since your government's been in power. How do you address that and suggest that we're actually facilitating natural resource development in this country, because it has been the backbone of our development in this country for a long time?
And natural resources have been and will continue to be an important part of the Canadian economy. Of course, we are going through an energy transition, and the nature of those resources are going to change over time. I will tell you that critical minerals is an enormous opportunity for this country going forward. Hydrogen is an enormous opportunity for this country going forward. But we also have to address carbon emissions, and that is something that, unfortunately, the Conservative Party seems not to understand.
Minister, thank you. Let me move towards carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration. As you know, in the last Parliament, I put forward a bill to get an investment tax credit for CCUS in Canada. I understand that the discussions are ongoing regarding whether we include enhanced oil recovery as part of the investment tax credit for carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration. We are hearing many noises from your department that they are not going to include enhanced oil recovery. And may I suggest to you that excluding enhanced oil recovery will make us uncompetitive with the 45Q regime that is just south of our border here in the United States. So having paper that says you get an investment tax credit, which is uneconomic, is words on paper only. The money is going to flow where the economic opportunity arises, and we've already seen that over the last handful of years when more and more direct air capture technologies are being developed, projects are being implemented in the United States, and not as much in Canada, where we have sunk a lot of money, both public and private, into the development of this technology. Would you please assure this committee that you're not just dancing against the wind here, but you're actually going to implement an investment tax credit where we will get some economic benefit in Canada?
Well, as you will know, the investment tax credit is the purview of the Department of Finance. But I would tell you that globally, the International Energy Agency and other experts have said that it is an important component of a comprehensive approach to dealing with climate. It is not a climate plan, but it is an important component. We intend to move forward. We have made investments in this space. The Department of Finance has been out consulting on what that investment tax credit should look like, and we certainly see carbon capture and sequestration as being an important tool going forward.
And with that, we're out of time on the first round of questions. We're going to go to Ms. Lapointe now for your 6 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Minister. As you're aware, critical minerals and mining are a major sector in my riding of Sudbury, so I'm sure it won't come as a surprise to you that I'd like to focus my line of questioning on the development of a critical minerals value chain. So the last year's budget allocated funds to establish a critical minerals center of excellence. And based in Sudbury, I can tell you that the innovation and research and development being done by this centre will be transformative to our future energy sector. Minister, in terms of the additional funds being requested for the centre, what will this $10.32 million investment be used for?
So first of all, thank you for the question. I think the critical mineral space is really an exciting one for Canada going forward, and I want to thank the member for her work on this file and the discussions that we've had about this, and certainly for the continued advocacy on the part of her constituents. In SUPS B, we requested $10 million, as you've noted, to advance our early work on the development of a critical mineral value chain. That initial investment supported the creation of the Critical Minerals Center of Excellence and also targeted research and development relating to upstream critical minerals processing and battery precursors. The funding provided and the work being done in this sector represents an enormous economic opportunity for not just extraction and processing, but also for downstream applications around batteries, around electric vehicles, and other things. And certainly we see the Centre of Excellence in playing an important supporting role in the Canada's critical mineral strategy that is presently under development, and I look forward to talking about that a little bit more as we move forward.
In developing Canada's critical mineral strategy, the enhanced environmental, social, and governance standards seems to differentiate Canada's critical minerals development from other nations. Why is this policy important?
Well, I think it's important to ensure that we are responsibly developing our resources. We have to address GHG emissions. We have to address other impacts on our environment. We have to look at the social issues that are in the process of developing these kinds of resources. As we were actually speaking about earlier, I mean, a number of the mines that are being developed in Canada are being developed as net zero mines. Canada has some of the highest environmental standards and labor standards in the world, and some of that is the result of work of governments, but some of it's the work that has been done by the Mining Association of Canada, which has been very thoughtful in this regard. And I think because of these standards, we have an important opportunity to play a very significant role in providing key materials that other nations are going to need, and certainly from a geopolitical perspective, increasingly many of our partners and allies in this country, in this world, are going to need.
Does the critical mineral strategy work that we're currently doing pertain to local value chain as well as global value chain?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they will support local economies and the value chains associated with them, certainly in communities that are historic providers and developers of minerals. There are real opportunities for us as we look as to how we actually develop further access to some of these critical minerals. There are processing opportunities, which again will exist in a whole range of communities across this country. But there is also, as I said, the downstream production of batteries, for example, which is something the government of Quebec and Ontario are very interested in the manufacturing of electric vehicles that certainly we and other countries in the world are very interested in. So absolutely, there are local value chains that actually extend to almost every province and territory in this country.
And what type of policy development do you see as important to secure Canada's position in global value chains?
Well, one of the things that was in my mandate letter was really the development and the launch of Canada's critical mineral strategy, which is really about looking end to end at how do we actually ensure that we are thoughtfully developing these. That certainly involves engagement with communities, but it certainly involves very much engagement with Indigenous peoples. How do we actually ensure that we are doing this quickly? Can we incent the development in certain ways? How do we actually ensure that Canada captures the processing value so we're not just simply digging up minerals and sending them offshore? How do we ensure that we're building downstream so that we're securing the mandates with respect to things like battery production? And how do we actually build this from an international perspective in a manner that actually responds to the geopolitical issues where, you know, we do have things like the processing of many critical minerals that are concentrated in one country in the world. And I think we are increasingly going to be looking to try to ensure that we are moving that into areas where there is going to be security of supply.
Minister, as you develop the critical minerals strategy, what would, in your role as Minister, what would you identify as a successful outcome of that strategy?
Well, I think a successful outcome is a very clear and transparent strategy that includes engagement with the provinces and territories who are also very interested. Almost every one of them is developing their own strategy. But it's got to be actionable. It's got to be something that actually is going to allow us to move. Let me take just one example. I mean, if we want to supply nickel sulfate in the context of battery production in Canada for the vehicles that are actually going to be utilized in Canada, we need probably 3 or 4 or 5 processing facilities in the country that don't exist today. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to enable the work that we're doing on many other files in the climate area. So I think it has to be actionable. And ideally, it is very much collaborative with provinces and territories, with industry, and with labor, and very much with Indigenous communities.
And, I apologize. That's the end of the 6 minutes, and we're going to keep moving on. So over to you, Monsieur Simard, for your 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci de votre présence.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, for being here today. I have considerable doubts that reducing petroleum emissions can be accomplished only with the financial resources of industry. I think it's only possible if there is significant support from the government. As an example, I would refer to the 2 carbon capture major projects that we see in Alberta. 57% of the costs are being assumed by the Albertan and federal governments. I'm mentioning this because in the document that was provided to us, in the breakdown of the $91 million that you were allotting for the fund to improve clean fuels and carbon capture strategies, this is the biggest amount in everything. It's got the lion's share. Now, there's something the Prime Minister is doing that I did during question period, and it's just one thing. It's when he refers to science. And what the scientists who come here have told us is that all of these carbon capture strategies, the data that we had about these, tended to come from people who were close to industry. When you look outside, the scientific data is saying that this is not profitable. Not only is it not profitable, it's not desirable. So I'm wondering whether this $91 million isn't being implemented to please Alberta, but it's actually not going to have any impact on the environment and not going to have any impact for the energy transformation and transition. Well, I don't agree with your question. First of all, 2/3 of the fund that we're talking about is for hydrogen and biofuels, and only 1/3 is for carbon capture. But if we're talking about carbon capture, there are many scientists and many agencies, such as the International Energy Agency, who believe that carbon capture is one tool that's necessary if we are to achieve net zero emissions by the 2050 target. It's not a climate plan, but it's a tool. And it's a tool that's very important, not only for the oil sector, but also for cement, for fertilizers, and a few other sectors as well. Because in those sectors, it's difficult to reduce greenhouse gases. Well, because I'm being generous, before the session began, I told you in advance what I was going to be talking about. The Minister of the Environment said that by 2023, we were going to see the end of inefficient or grants and subsidies. What is an inefficient subsidy when it comes to hydrocarbons? There is one indicator that can be of use here, and we talk about the energy rate of return. The energy rate of return indicates that blue hydrogen has an index of 4. And if you look at hydroelectricity, in other words, what's being invested versus what's energy is resulting from this. If you look at hydroelectricity, we have a much different, we have 100. So there's a very great difference. Do you think that your hydrogen strategy, by not stating clearly any targets for carbon production, do you feel that these are efficient subsidies? Well, as we've said, I agree with some of the things that you said. I think it's very important to have a carbon measure in the fuel that we're producing. I don't like the blue and green and all the other colors. I think we have to measure the carbon which is in the fuel. And that's something that we're working on right now to be able to obtain this in the future. But with the grant, when we're talking about inefficient ones, we're talking about those that accelerate production and exploration of fossil fuels. We have promised to eliminate those grants by 2023. That's what I wanted to hear you say. So, if I understand correctly, the rhetoric that I've heard to now saying that we can reduce emissions, but it's not about reducing production, you agree that this doesn't make any sense. You can't simply say that we're going to cut back on emissions. We have to also reduce production. You agree with this? No. The atmosphere absorbs emissions, and that's what we have to work on to reduce greenhouse gases. Of course, in the future, when we deploy zero-emission vehicles, after several decades, we will see a reduction in terms of petroleum. But now we have to reduce greenhouse gases. But that's what's causing climate change. And this is the problem that we have to face. Thank you.
Mr. Angus, let's get your 6 minutes started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Mr. Minister, for joining us. One of the more dramatic statements at COP26 was the Prime Minister's promise of an emissions cap. So where is it? When does it start?
Thank you for the question. So the emissions cap is something that we said we would consult with provinces and territories, with industry, with labor. And that is something that is ongoing. We intend to bring that forward during the course of this coming year, but we have promised consultations, and we intend to honor that promise.
So there's an Alberta cap, which would allow for about a 30% increase of production. Is that where you're going, or are you going to go where it's been said that we needed it 2019 with dramatic ratcheting?
I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but what we have said is it will be capped at levels that reflect current production. It is not the same cap as Rachel Notley's cap, which is significantly higher.
Okay, because, I mean, the Canadian Energy Regulator tells us they're expecting at least 1 million barrel a year increase by 2030, and then 2050 will basically be same production we've got today. So that's federal regulator. Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers came here and told us their plan is to vastly increase production. So how does your cap work if the regulator and the industry is planning to increase production?
Well, I would say a couple things. I mean, the first, as I said to Mr. Savard, is the focus for us is on emissions. It's on reducing emissions in line with what we have committed to do, which is 40-45% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. That is the primary focus for us. But in terms of the Canada Energy Regulator, what I have asked them to do, as I think you probably know, is to provide us a scenario that is in line with 1.5 degrees Celsius in the same way that the International Energy Agency has done that, and I expect them to bring that forward this year.
So will your cap get us to keep us at 1.5? Because we're talking
focus,
about major increases of production. And I guess the thing that I find hard to believe is I'm told sitting around this committee that production and emissions have nothing in common, when I think that is just a logical fallacy. So if you're bringing an emissions cap, are you targeting production?
So the CER assessment did not include, for example, all of the commitments that were made at this year's COP. And of course, everybody knows that we have to accelerate the work that is being done, not just in Canada, but around the world. That includes the deployment of zero-emission technology, which will, for vehicles, which will affect the demand for oil. It goes across all sectors. And so that needs to be built into the work that the CER is doing.
Okay, so because one of the other things that came out of COP was Minister Guilbeault said that he used the term weasel words for fossil fuel subsidies and said that it would be ended in 18 months. Are you planning on keeping that as a standard?
We have made a commitment to eliminate inefficient fossil fuel subsidies by the end of 2023. I would say that's 2 years in advance of the rest of the G20, and we will be the first country to do so. Because
the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers said that they wanted $75 billion. I mean, these guys aren't shy. They've met with your government 6,800 times. They're pretty comfortable with you guys. I'm surprised they're not sitting here. They want $75 billion to implement carbon capture technology, and they want the public to pay for 75% of that. So if you're going to be using carbon capture technology to reduce our usage, will it have a clear statement that it can't be used to increase oil production?
So, as I said in response to the Conservative member's question, the investment tax credit, which is I think probably what they were largely referring to, is something that is being driven and developed by the Department of Finance. But what I will tell you is we are very focused on ensuring that we are aiming measures to reduce emissions. That is true for CCUS in the oil and gas space, but it's also true for the investments in electric arc technology in the steel manufacturing space.
Well, I get that. It's just that the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers aren't asking for cement or anybody else. They're saying they want $75 billion of taxpayers' money. So my question is, based on the letter of the 400 scientists who've written to you, they have said this will be used to vastly increase production. So are we going to be getting a guarantee, or is this going to be the weasel words that our environment minister warned us about, that if we are capturing carbon across all sectors, that this will not be used to enhance production in the oil sector?
And what I will say to you, Mr. Angus, is the focus for us is on reducing emissions in order to achieve our climate targets, and doing so in a manner that actually will ensure strong economic opportunities across this country. We will continue to do that in the area with CCUS and in hydrogen and biofuels, in steel manufacturing, in aluminum, and everywhere else.
Thank you. Because the other area that's key for what's being done with net zero is to increase exports and send it offshore, because as you know, none of that gets counted on Canada's emissions. So key to that is TMX. So the Canadian public was told it'll cost $5.4 billion to build, and $7.4, then $9.6, and $16 billion. So we're at $21 billion. I mean, that would be an extraordinary amount of money to spend on anything. And this is all predicated on a vast increase in bitumen exports offshore. So is the taxpayer on the hook for this $21 billion? Are we going to continue to pay for this?
Well, I think that the Minister of Finance was quite clear that the additional capital that's going to be required to finish that will be raised from private sources. But I would tell you that the business case for the project remains strong, and it will continue to do what it was supposed to do, which is take oil off of rail and to ensure that we are actually addressing the discount that we get on our resources in the United States, because we have no ability to ship oil to other parts of the world.
And helping for the export market that CAP says is going to allow them the extra at least 1 million barrels a year.
Mr. Angus,
You're
I mean,
giving them the
you know,
technology to do that,
Mr.
right?
Angus, we are moving through an energy transition. It is not like you can flip a switch overnight.
I totally get that.
Cars on the road right now in this
spending the
country,
money on this,
96% of them use gasoline.
We
We're out
don't
of time
see
on
the
this
switch
now.
getting
That's
turned.
the end of the 6 minutes. So thank you. Thank you, Minister, for being here. I know we're up against that hard stop time, so you're going to have to pack up. We do have the officials who will stay with us. And I've been told that we have the room with the interpretation and staff until 6:30 if we want to make up a bit of time that we've lost. I'll leave it to the will of the committee to see. We also need to go through the vote process. But we can now get into our second round. I did jump through the pleasantries that we usually offer. And so I would like to take a moment just to officially welcome the officials who are here. We have from the Department of Natural Resources, John Hannaford, Deputy Minister, in person, which is a huge thing, as well as Shirley Carruthers, Assistant Deputy Minister, Corporate Management and Services Sector, Chief Financial Officer. So welcome to both of you. And then online joining us, we have Glenn Hargrove, Assistant Deputy Minister, Fuel Sector, Molly Johnson, Assistant Deputy Minister, Low Carbon Energy Sector, Jeff Labonte, Assistant Deputy Minister, Lands and Mineral Sector, Beth McNeil, Assistant Deputy Minister, Canadian Forest Service, Drew Leyburn, Assistant Deputy Minister, Energy Efficiency and Technology Sector, Frank DeRosier, Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy and Innovation Sector, and Angie Bruce, Assistant Deputy Minister, Major Projects Management Office and Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation Sector. So quite a strong support group from departmental officials. So welcome to each of you. And with that, we're ready to go into our second round. Oh, I also wanted to welcome Mr. Zimmer, who's here today, and Mr. Morris, who's joined us. So with that, our next round is for 5 minutes, and first up I have Mr. McGuire. So Mr. McGuire, if you're ready, over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. There's a number of questions that I'd like to ask, and I'll just let the department determine who they should answer them. If I could, I appreciate that they're all here today, and appreciate the minister for for his time here today as well. I'm thinking of the Atomic Energy of Canada here. There's some funds been put forward from the Department of Defense, to various organizations in the Canadian Safety and Security Program, and with the supplementary estimates, there's as I mentioned, the D&D for Canadian Safety and Security Program. So in January, the Swedish Security Program Service announced an investigation of drones at 3 of their nuclear power plants. They have also been reports over the years of other unknown drone-type flying objects flying over Canadian nuclear facilities. In the security that we're in today, and it's been recently announced in the United States, legislation has just passed in their National Defense Authorization Act, for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to report the, quote, number of incidents and descriptions thereof of unidentified aerial phenomena or drones of unknown origin association with nuclear power generation stations, nuclear fuel storage sites, or facilities regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, end quote. So I'm just wondering if any of the department officials are aware of the legislation that was just passed in the U.S. Congress regarding these specific clauses.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the question. I must admit I am not familiar with that. I can say, however, that overall security of our nuclear facilities is obviously something that's of extraordinary importance, including through the regulators' functions.
Thanks. I'll send you the information. We'll make it available to you. And have you received reports on these drones or unidentified aerial phenomena near Canadian nuclear facilities?
I have not.
So I guess, can you ask your officials to inquire and report back to the committee in writing anything they know about them?
We can do so,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. And are reports of violations reported in and around nuclear facilities publicly disclosed?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, perhaps I could turn to one of my colleagues who is more directly responsible for nuclear. Molly Johnson may have more detailed information with respect to that question. Molly?
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would say that the security and safety and security is, of course, one of the top priorities, and we're considering nuclear. We can check and confirm on the drone issue specifically and the reporting that's available, and get back to you.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that. I'm just wondering, while you're here, I'm confident that the department is aware of the funding of the $10.3 million for the Department of Canadian Critical Mineral Value Chains. Which specific critical minerals are the focus of developing value chains? My colleague from the Liberals was just asking about this of the minister.
Thank you very much for the question. As the minister said, the development of our critical minerals is of extraordinary importance, not only for our domestic economy, but also due to the broader geopolitical dynamics that exist right now with respect to this area and resource development. We've identified 31 critical minerals as part of our exercise in defining our focus with respect to this area. I would say, though, that there are different kinds of considerations with respect to different sorts of minerals. That as the minister said, on the one hand, we will be looking at a certain set of minerals with respect to, say, batteries, which are a domestic supply chain that is of critical importance to us, not only, again, economically and geopolitically, but also in terms of developing low-emission vehicles. There is a second set, and overlapping to some degree, which are of particular interest to international supply chains. And then, as I say, we have an overall envelope of 31.
Thank you, Mr. Hanford. The Natural Resources Committee's report on critical minerals, there was a recommendation that identified the intermediate processing industry as the weakest link in Canada's critical mineral value chain. So will any of these funds address sort of the shortfall, the issue?
At this stage, our focus has been on creating the Center of Excellence and doing some research and development with respect to some areas of particular importance in the development of the of critical minerals. As the minister said, however, there is a real recognition that there are a series of stages that are of critical importance in the development of critical minerals, and processing right now is an area where there is a concentration geopolitically, which is of significance, and so that is something that we are mindful of as we develop our strategy.
These funds will help that. It's recommended that the government work to develop a strategic vision for the developing of Canada's critical minerals by assessing the benefits of establishing an Office of Critical Minerals within the Government of Canada. And it's made up of multidisciplinary experts who would work on developing critical mineral supply and value chains, according to the report.
Sorry, Mr. McGuire. I hate to interrupt you. You still have half a minute here, but there's a new set of bells have just gone. And once bells start, we do require unanimous consent to continue. And so we do have the officials here, and I need to put it to the committee if we want to continue. And are we willing to do as we did last time, stay in the room, vote remotely, and then we'll get going? So I see nods in agreement. Okay, we're good to go. So my apologies. Back to you, Mr. McGuire, for your last half minute.
Well, just my question then is, will there be any of these funds, like we're talking about the $10.3 million, or will any of these funds go to assessing the benefits of establishing this office?
Well, the intention of the funds in this SUPS is really, as I say, twofold. There is the creation of the Centre of Excellence, or the elaboration of the Centre of Excellence, and also some degree of research and development. So this is pursuant to the...
I've just got a shortness of time here. Within the U.S.'s Defense Authorization Act, the government has talked about, with its allies, with partners of the United States, as appropriate to better assess the nature and extent of unidentified aerial phenomena. I believe it would be prudent for the Atomic Energy of Canada to proactively reach out to their American counterparts to discuss this legislation and to inquire how they are handling these reports and investigations. Would you be open to reaching out to the American Nuclear Regulatory Commission to start this important conversation?
We certainly take that under advisement.
Mm-hmm. That's the end of the time. Just what I'm doing here with the cards is giving 30-second notice for your time, and then the red card is time's up. Don't stop mid-sentence, but wrap up your thoughts, and then we'll move to the next person. I have moved to the second hour of questions now that we're with officials, and so in this round, everybody gets 6 minutes, and so we'll now go to Ms. Brusen, who will have 6 minutes.
I think it was Ms. Jones.
Oh, was it? Okay, my list had... We'll go to Ms. Jones.
Hi, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm really happy to hear the comments and the presentations here today. So a couple of things I wanted to raise. First of all, in the estimates, there's been allocations to look at off-diesel programs in remote and rural communities across Canada. Can you tell me if there's been much uptake on that program and what the interest level is like, if we're having success in doing those transitions in communities, either partly or wholly?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. This is obviously an important part of our overall suite of climate measures, and it is an opportunity to look at a more sustainable set of energy supplies for our northern and remote communities. The program's currently advancing more than 90 renewable energy and capacity building projects in 131 communities, 123 of which are for Indigenous communities. And the program has signed 55 agreements and announced projects in British Columbia, Northwest Territories, Yukon, Nunavut, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, and Newfoundland and Labrador.
Thank you. My next question is around the estimates that where we saw funding allocated for wildfire resilience. We've heard the stories in the news, especially out of Western Canada, and how climate change is contributing to wildfires. Can you tell me what that money is actually targeted for and what the intended use of it is?
I might turn to my CFO on the specific funding in this case.
specific funding. So the funding in the estimates for the wildfires is $2.88 million this fiscal year. So this investment is actually $29.3 million over 5 years, which will support the increased mapping of areas in northern Canada at risk of wildfires and enhance the capacity of Canadian interagency Forest Fire Centre, which is jointly funded in partnership with provinces and territories.
Okay, have that been advancing, or is that completely new initiative that's just getting started?
So I'll turn to the Canadian Forestry Service to give a bit more of an update on that. Beth, please.
Yes, thank you for your question. And it's a good question, Mr. Chair. This is money to enhance the mandate of the CIFC, as we call it in Winnipeg, the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre. So work is underway. One of those enhancements is a very important program called Fire Smart Canada that will allow us in Canada to reduce the risk of fire. So it's on the prevention end. The other important piece of work that's underway with this funding is the establishment of an Indigenous working group and to bring Indigenous knowledge to the table when it comes to risk reduction and prevention for fire. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I love that program. The other piece I saw in the estimates was around funding for the Polar Continental Shelf program. And I'm just wondering if you can tell me, what this is doing. Is it supporting employment and training and new opportunities for Indigenous people and Northerners? And if so, can you provide some information to me on how that's going to work and how they'll be engaged?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. The Polar Continental Shelf Program is a long-standing science platform which has facilitated research in a whole range of different areas which pertain to the North, including the effects of climate and issues pertaining to mammals and shoreline in the North. It also includes a specific facility, a hub in Resolute Bay in Nunavut, and is, as I say, an important convener with respect to science. There are specific programs that are part of the overall program, which target training of Indigenous peoples so therefore to provide employment opportunities in the North, and obviously the facilities in the North as well also support local communities, and the specific science that is done attaches particular importance to Indigenous-related activities.
So it's building on the existing investments and commitments that were already there?
Correct, and continuing to push ahead with respect to this critical area of science, and also with respect to this area that's critical to our sovereignty.
Okay, good. Just another question. Also in the estimates, there was some funding that was allocated for transition of diesel specifically for Indigenous communities. Can you tell me how the federal government is working with those communities and those partners to ensure that they can reduce the emissions in their area? And are they the people coming forward with this program, or are we outreaching to them in terms of looking at what the options are?
And I'd say just a very brief response in this. We're out of time, and then we need to move to our next person.
Sure, and I'll turn to Ms. Johnson to respond quickly on process there.
You bet. So these projects are effectively clean energy projects. We have two streams to the programs. There's a capacity building where we work with communities so that they are able, it's almost like pre-development, to prepare for the kinds of clean energy projects that we would be building in community to get off of diesel. And then the other part is actually building those projects in partnership with communities. So that's sort of the two sides of the house as we are trying to work to reduce reliance on diesel, but also prepare for the clean energy projects that will be built in community. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now we're going to move to Monsieur Simard for his 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if my question is for Mr. Hanford or for Ms. McNeil. I'd like to go back to what I am seeing in the document which was presented to us to contribute to the support and management of the pine beetle in Alberta. We know that in Canada, Quebec is probably the province where the forestry industry is the greatest. And then BC is next, and then Ontario, and Alberta are way behind. In Quebec, we have the spruce budworm, which is absolutely destroying the province historically, 23% increase in surface area just for the lower St. Lawrence. And yet, I don't see a single cent offered by the federal government to fight the spruce budworm. So just to give you a bit of history, the Quebec government has invested $55 million in 2021 to stop the pandemic in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, Lower St. Lawrence, and the Gaspé area. The last investment that the federal government made to fight the spruce budworm was in 2018, $75 million only for the Atlantic provinces. Now, is the Irving family in there for some? Is that have anything to do with that? So my question is simple: why forget Quebec?
Mr. Chair, and I will refer to Ms. McNeill in a second. I would just say, though, that the government's been very clear in its support for the forest sector across the country. There's more than 200,000 people in over 300 communities that rely on the sector. And since budget 2017, government's committed over $345 million to support the sector in terms of innovation and transformation. So, I think there has been a significant level of support across the country with respect to these areas of development, but I'll turn to Ms. McNeill with respect to the budworm in particular.
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, I'd like to mention a few things. First of all, the investment that we made in the mountain pine beetle in Alberta, that's actually to protect the forests in eastern Canada. It's to stop the eastward spread of that particular forest pest. I also would like to make a correction to the honorable member. We actually invested $11.6 million in the spruce budworm. We reprofiled unspent monies, and that was announced in the economic update in December of 2020. And that $11.6 million went specifically for the spruce budworm spraying in the province of Quebec. And with regard to your comments, with regard to the comments on the early intervention strategy in Atlantic Canada, we recognized amongst the federal experts, researchers, that trying to intervene early on in the spread of the spruce budworm from Quebec region into Atlantic Canada was the best way to identify those hotspots and control the pests from damaging the spruce and fir trees in most of Atlantic Canada. Now, that being said, and it is a cost shared, it's 60-40 federal provincial with industry participation.
Juste rapidement, peut-être pour...
Perhaps briefly, if we could simply realign the conversation. I don't understand how there are so many communities in Quebec who depend on forestry. And yet, as far as I know, the economic engine of Alberta is not forestry. You're talking about $11 million in 2020. And if my memory serves me correctly, it was not just for Quebec, it was also for the maritime provinces. So not just for Quebec. So that is nowhere near the $25 million I'm seeing here. And it is completely ignoring a situation where the forestry sector is in a very precarious position in Quebec because of the spruce budworm crisis. I just don't understand that there is absolutely nothing for the spruce budworm in what you're presenting us with today.
Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, I would like to point out that the province of Quebec and the industry, the forest sector in Quebec, is extremely important to the forest sector writ large in Canada, particularly in advancing the bioeconomy. And since 2019, we've invested $38 million in FP Innovations, headquartered in Pointe Claire, to produce tomorrow's fiber-based forest products. We've also invested more than $25 million.
Comme on change, je vais me permettre de vous
I'm taking the liberty of interrupting you because we're changing subjects. If you want to talk about innovation in the forestry sector, I remember that in the 2021 budget, there were $54.8 million over 2 years that were supposed to be used for 2021-2022. Now, I don't know why I'm not seeing them here in this breakdown.
I believe you are seeing in the the portion of this year from the announcement of $54.8 million in budget 2021. And through our call for proposals, we've already started to fund projects. For instance, Anomera's, the bioplastic project in Quebec. I would also like to point out that 43 million of our 65 million spent on 2 billion trees this year alone has been in the province of Quebec.
That's the end of the 6 minutes. Okay, we're at the end of that time, and so now, Mr. Angus, we'll go over to you for your 6 minutes.
We thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and your expertise. This is really important for us. I want to begin by discussing the issue of strategic metals and the need for a strategy. In the little town I live in, when it rains, we see pink on the hills, and that's cobalt. But cobalt is a very rare metal, and it is at the heart of some of the worst human rights abuses on the planet in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is the blood metal, and unless we find alternatives, we are going to continue to perpetuate horrific human rights abuses. Lithium's another key metal. Horrific environmental devastation caused by it. And so we're looking at these alternatives in light of a geopolitical struggle with China, which is controlling more and more of the market. So in Canada right now, just over the hill and down the road from me, we have the first cobalt processing facility, which would be good, but the feed is still coming from the DRC. So in terms of the government's commitment, we have mines, but in terms of actually having a strategy to ensure control of the strategic metals like cobalt, like lithium, I'm concerned that we're not taking steps that are important. For example, the selling of the Neolithium company to a Chinese state-owned enterprise, to me, strikes us as like, why would we sell a Canadian-owned company to Chinese when it's about lithium? They are trying to control the market. Was there an assessment done by your department on this?
So thank you very much, Mr. Angus, and I'll turn to my colleague, Mr. Labonte, for more detailed comments. But I would say a couple of things. First of all, as I mentioned earlier, the government recognizes the critical importance of the development of these assets for economic reasons, for environmental reasons, and for geopolitical reasons. And there are obviously a range of different other suppliers in the market with respect to a number of these goods. But I think one of the real assets that Canada has is its ESG reputation, and this is an opportunity for us to further elaborate the soundness of the practices and the environmental and governance practices that result in the development of these assets. I'll turn to my colleague, Mr. Labonte, for further elaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. Building on the comments from Deputy Hannaford, very clearly you've struck on two very important minerals, and of course the development of how those minerals reach market and what they're used for is extremely important. And in view of that, certainly when there's an acquisition, for example, that you referenced, there is the Investment Canada Act where there is a review that's conducted about the investment. And of course, that act is headed by the Department of Innovation, Science and Economic Development. But departments like Natural Resources and others around the federal family contribute to the review and are part of the reviewing process that takes a look at each of those transactions. And so we do bring our expertise to bear on those.
I guess what concerns me is, the United States has raised a huge red flag. China is trying to control the market, and we just let them buy a lithium company. And the argument that I've heard from the government is, well, they weren't really a Canadian company anyways. And that's because Canada has 75% of the world's mining companies registered here. And they're registered here because they get corporate protections. They get tax incentives. They get to sell their stock. If you're asking me, if they want to use our advantages, then they're a Canadian company. And that we let a Chinese company take over one of the most critical critical assets that is in such short supply, and we gave it to a Chinese government company without raising a flag, to me is really concerning. I would hope that Natural Resources would have at least put up some of those flags.
So I think, as been referenced, that transaction happened in the market, and it was an acquisition of a Canadian-controlled company under the Investment Canada Act. It, like all investments, is reviewed. In that act, there is the requirement that state-owned enterprises that acquire a Canadian company are reviewed, and there is actually guidelines that provide further requirements for the review when it relates to critical minerals or critical minerals.
Sorry to interrupt. So would you consider the fact that since we are in a geopolitical struggle with China over these key minerals, that we actually have to maybe rewrite the Investment Act, because we're letting a state-owned company take it? This isn't just a market acquisition. We allowed a Canadian company that used all of our corporate protections, and we gave it to a Chinese state company. Do we have to look at rewriting the act?
I think that's a question for perhaps Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, but certainly the Act has all the provisions that are necessary for Canada to take a look at acquisitions, as I said, that happen by state-owned enterprises, as well as those that require that require critical minerals. But your reference was to lithium. So there are 20 different lithium projects under development in Canada. Canada does have lithium resources that are domestically being developed, and there is a market growing in terms of electric vehicle production, as you would know.
Yes.
And the lithium market globally, the largest two providers of lithium production in the world are the United States and Chile, followed by China.
Well, China controls the cobalt market. China is trying to control these. This is, I guess, sorry to interrupt. It's just that if we are going to allow a Chinese state company to take critical assets, we can't really say that we have a critical mineral strategy.
The honourable member may take that position, but I'm not sure I'd take the same view, Mr. Chair. But
fair enough.
All of the things are reviewed. What I was pointing out on the lithium was just to point out that there's the production of lithium and the process of lithium, and that difference is quite profound in terms of the production of lithium. The two largest producers that dominate some 45% of the market are the United States and Chile. The processing is, of course, as you pointed out, happens more predominantly in China, and it is significant, and it's certainly something that the market is responding to. As I mentioned, there are some 20 different projects underway in Canada around lithium. Right here they're in Quebec, they're in Alberta, they're in Saskatchewan, and they're using new and different ways of developing lithium so that there will be lithium supply to feed the value chains that we expect will emerge.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Okay, folks, we're out of time. We now have 7 minutes before the vote, and I'm just wondering what the committee would like to do. We do have the voting part on the supplementary estimates, and so we could move right into that. We could release the officials and move into the vote. How much time do we want to actually do the other vote? Because we could start in the discussion, and if everybody has a couple of, it'll be 7 minutes or so before we get into it. So at this point, are we willing to let the officials go? All right, so I would like to thank all of the officials. This is the first time since I've started chairing that we've had all of you together, and it's great to have you here. Deputy Minister Hannaford, thank you so much, and Ms. Carruthers, thank you for joining us today. And so if you want to, if everybody wants to log off, we appreciate your time. And then for the members, what we'll do is just for the instructions on the voting, I'll keep an eye on the clock here. For Supplementary Estimate C 2021-2022, the order of reference for the committee to study the Supplementary Estimate C expires not later than 3 sitting days before the final sitting day of the supply period, ending not later than March 26th, or 3 sitting days before the last allotted day of the current period, which has not yet been allotted. So 5 votes were referred to the committee. Do we want to vote on the Supplementary Estimate C at this time? We're good to go? Okay. So is there... I can seek the unanimous consent of the committee to group these 5 votes together for a decision. Is there unanimous consent to proceed this way? Okay. So, shall all votes referred to the committee in the Supplementary Estimate C carry?
Division.
Okay. Finally, shall I report the votes back to the House? Yes. Yes. Okay. With that, we are done the committee business for today. There had been hope to go in camera for some committee business, just to finalize some work of the subcommittee from Monday. There's nothing pressing there. We can carry that forward until we come back in a couple of weeks after our constituency week. And so if everybody's okay with it, we will simply adjourn at this point, let you go and vote.
Wonderful job.
And enjoy a couple of weeks. We'll look forward to a good 3-week stretch when we're all back here. Take care. We're adjourned.